Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I have Alberto Nunez back on the show. He hasn't competed since 2017, so this is a big contest prep season for him. He is competing this year, and we're going to be talking about some of the unconventional ways to stage that he is taking, such as not tracking his macros, not tracking steps, and we're going to talk about how that's going and why he's doing it. And as always, guys, if you do enjoy these episodes, please do give us a solid rating over on your podcast provider. If it's Spotify, give us a nice 5-star review. If you're listening on YouTube, please do make sure to subscribe, leave us a comment, leave us a like. It's all appreciated. But without further ado, let's get into the chat. Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I have Alberto Nunez back on the show. I was just saying it's been 4 months since Alberto was on the show. Always feels like longer for some reason since I've had a guest on, but he was on not solo, he was with Dirk, talking about Dirk's contest prep. Whereas this time round, I get to just talk about actually Alberto's prep. And this is how many years for the listeners since the last one? It's been a while, hasn't it?
2017. Yeah.
Which was my last season until I competed last year.
And you were brave for that, Steve, because I wanted to that year, but I'm like, I don't know about this world, man. So
yeah, I kind of saw what happened the year of like the main COVID event, like 2020, and still some shows went ahead, and I'm very glad I started to, as if I was going to compete that season. I'm glad I pulled the plug early for that. But then I was like, I think they'll go ahead this year. But in hindsight, actually, not that this was a question I was intending to go down, but and I know it's been like a theme has been like, is natural bodybuilding dying? And it's obviously that was the year off, like I did it last year. And I imagine Worlds was one of the smaller kind of events, and I know specifically in my category it was like, because I know if you came, I think it was like top 3 or 4, you had to do like a 30-second posing routine, and I hadn't prepared for that. And then I was like, I only have 4 people in my category, I need to get a posing routine like somewhat nailed down for this. So that was interesting, and I kind of expected more people to be there, but I guess I don't know if you have any thoughts on how this season's looking, what the shows have been like in America so far in terms of numbers.
Well, we just got way too many shows, man. You know how that goes. I think if we consolidated the shows to just like these events happen every year, like people would travel, they might not do as many shows. But I think most competitors would probably rather have, I don't know, maybe double-digit lineups, as opposed to like, hey, this show, I could sleep in my own bed tonight, but it's me and some other dude, So that's the issue. And I think when people like mention like natural bodybuilding is like dying or something, some sort of headline of that nature, that's usually where that comes from. Well, that plays a major influence in that. Like we have tried drug-free shows in the state that I live in right now, Colorado, and like what will happen is some of the like local NPC coaches that focus on the NPC circuit, they will maybe have an athlete who meets the criteria to do those shows, and they're like, yeah, let's go do it. So they go over there, keep the show with their athlete. And they're like, this is natural bodybuilding, and it's like these, especially like up and coming shows are just bad samples to pull from. But it would help if, hey, we just had like, a few regional shows in, every part of the US, and, because sometimes like it can be quite disheartening. Like I haven't had that happen to me personally, but I've had happen to a few athletes. It's like, man, there's like 20 athletes here across all divisions.
Yeah, 20 is really low. We had the WNBF first timers just happened recently, which I was able to judge at, which was amazing as an experience. But it was sold out as a venue, and there was maybe over 200 competitors. Certainly, I think there was over 150 competitors, so tons, and the classes were packed out. But I guess that's because here, at least with the WNBF UK, they've only got the 2 events happening. And last year it was 1 event. So I kind of see when you consolidate it, you draw in more quality, or at least more quantity, which probably draws in more quality. And overall, like the quality of athlete and the quantity is what drives how good the show is in general. It doesn't matter how flashy everything else is. like ultimately you're coming to see them on stage. So if you've got like people aren't going to go and see like 20 competitors unless they have like a loved one there, for example.
Well, and the argument, I think, especially here in the States, is that, well, we have all these shows so that everyone, almost no matter where you live, like they have a place to compete. But, yeah, look, it costs more to travel, but I think sometimes they forget that bodybuilders, like by nature, are planners. And if you know that, like, okay, like there's really only like these 2 shows that take place in my region of the US, and it's gonna take a 5-8 hour drive or something like that. Like, I'll put that into my budget for like next year, like the hotel, travel, all that stuff. Like, bodybuilders figure it out, man. So,
Yeah.
As large of a country as like this is, and a lot of barren spaces here, they'll make it, man. If you build it, they will come.
And so I guess, yeah, I think you said you're, the last I saw, like 8 weeks out. Is that right?
I believe so. I lose track of time, man, but
That's
think it's
good.
8 weeks. Yeah.
I much prefer, I don't know why, it's kind of one of my things that irritate me a little bit for no real reason, when people are like almost to the day, to the hour of how long they're out. And I'm like, man, you're real focused on that, aren't you?
Yeah, and you do. It'll freak me out if I focus on it too much, because I could go back 8 weeks like the other way, and it's like, oh shoot, that wasn't so long ago. So that means so I'd rather not.
So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're someone who deals with the level of leanness a bit better than the average person, and also you've been through it many times, and also doing like Instagram, probably even like going and doing like presentations and things when you're at this level. But I know it's hard. Like, people who know 8 weeks out for a bodybuilder is not, and especially someone who gets real lean, is not an easy place to get to. But how's that been so far in terms of the journey to this point versus other seasons? Has it been more comfortable? Just what you remember? How's that been?
Oh man, I'm gonna get hate for this one, I think. So swear, man, there's been two moments where I felt dieted, and I've always told athletes that, like, hey, when you have a bad day in the gym, like, it doesn't mean like, okay, now it's the downward spiral where like strength is just, it's like, it would happen in the off season and you probably wouldn't pay too much mind to, like, it'd just be like, oh, okay, bad day, we'll be back tomorrow, whatever. But for some reason, prep, like bodybuilders, that happens. They're like, okay, this is where it starts, man. So those 2 moments that I've had so far, one I can't even recall, but I know there was 2. So it must have not been all that bad, but I don't remember. And then the one that I do remember it was just a day that was very outside of like my usual. I had a friend competing a couple hours away. I had Brian, who my athlete who just won the Mayhem. He was here with me, so I was trying to fit all those things in, go support them, and then get Brian over to our gym afterwards. And anyhow, at some point, like, I get there and I was doing work at the gym while he was training, and I'm like, man, I feel dieted down. And then I tallied it up in my head. I'm like, bro, you probably had like 800 calories today. But it was interesting. That came to mind, is like, is it just going to be this way from like this point, like forward? Did you just enter that portal? But now I had my next meal and I'm good. So, honestly, I feel, I feel fine. Like, it hasn't been difficult at all. The difficult part has been, if anything, trying to stay as mindful and as objective as I have been, so that I can get to this point where I'm at right now, so that I can continue that. Because it's very easy to just do really dumb shit as you get closer. So that's the hard part. It's just like, it's like balancing like that urgency with also like, hey, we must protect the system. We must protect, your body. And so far, this has been like by far the easiest prep. Like, and I guess people might at that point be like, well, why are you doing this still? But to me, that's kind of like the beauty in it. It's like, okay, you just find different elements to master. So at some point I just wanted to get shredded. Okay, I got shredded. And then it was like, okay, let me get shredded and maintain muscle. Let me get shredded and maintain performance. Let me get shredded and make it sink in better to the rest of my life. And right now it's like, okay, how can I make this like the most efficient way possible, like process possible, especially when it comes to just general health and my perception of how easy it has been. So I'm about 6-7 pounds out, I believe. Um, if I don't have trunks on, because of the way everyone's glutes kind of strike differently, like mine's kind of come from the middle out. It's weird.
Oh, that is weird.
Yeah. So I have like the whole hot dog pack, like it's there. Like you can see every. It's literally 6 of them, like a 6-pack on your butt. Like they're there. I can feel the vascularity in my glutes as well. So yeah, no, it's been fun to learn to play this instrument like within the context of what I'm asking it to do. The instrument being my body.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic to hear, and it's actually interesting on the glutes as well. I guess that could be a whole very niche, random thing to talk about in terms of how different glutes striate. But mine are like side, and then one side's leaner than the other as well. So like when the the left one, when that starts coming in, I know I'm getting quite lean. But I think it's also nice, actually, when I think about even my last season, I didn't really feel the diet until I did my first, like it was like a warm-up show. And then after that, it was this sense, it like hit me like a truck. I was like, oh, now everything feels real. And I'm also probably similar to you in terms of, in some ways, with the genetics of just being a smaller, leaner individual. Just generally, I find it harder pushing up. But I think the context needs to be said in terms of not just how many years you've been competing, the number of seasons you've done, but also you have a very well thought out, periodized process to allow you to have got to this point. It's not like it's any old diet phase for you. You've set up multiple months ahead of time to have got to this kind of position of kind of where fat loss can be really efficient, and you're not kind of grinding and hopefully not grinding you're grinding for as short a period as possible as you can be, I guess.
Yeah, no, correct, Steve. Like I as you know, like I don't like losing more than 8 to 10% of my body weight when I start a prep. Like to me, that's very important. Like that's almost sports specificity, right? It's like if a powerlifter got really good at his 10 RMs, but it's like I've never done this before for a set of 12. It's like, well, that's great, bro, but like your sport's over here. So same deal with us. It's like, yeah, you've put on all this muscle this off season, but bro, like now you have to do something. The next act is like pretty much the exact opposite of what builds muscle, right? From the state of anabolism to like a catabolic state. Like that's just what fat loss is. So yeah, I do like to set it up where, I don't have to lose a whole lot of weight. So it has given me also the space to, sort of play around with this, and make it more, I guess, more like a general fat loss phase. Because I think if you were to ask most bodybuilders, like well-versed bodybuilders, that, have at this point demonstrated some good control over like their physique. Like they can make it gain weight when they want to at the rate they want. They can lose fat, when they want to and meet their deadlines. I am pretty sure most of them can go from say 20% to 50% body fat without necessarily tracking. It's just like a set of behaviors, and they just kind of, they cut those patterns already, and they're just tracing that. This is just an extension of that. Like when I think about it, like it's just like, okay, well, you've prepped a bunch of times. I think I tallied up the amounts of months that I've spent in prep since I've started. It was like 40 something months, I think. So it's like, all this, like, what it should feel like, what it's felt like when you've made the wrong turn, what your life generally looks like when it comes to your breakfast, when it comes to your pre-training, that sort of deal. So it is a lot of retracing steps, but it's gotten rid of an element of restriction. And like whether it like it's clear to you or not, like if like this restriction like bothers you, like I don't know, maybe you don't eat much bread, Steve, but if someone told you can't have bread on that diet, like it's still kind of there, and I think for the vast majority of us, even the people who might say, hey, I kind of enjoy the control and like having all these like variables like neatly organized, it's still something that's weighing on you at the end of the day. And nothing, especially the human body, man, like it's such a complicated, well-developed brain, but like the stuff that we can create in our own minds is just ridiculous. And how that can manifest into your physique, even crazier, because I've seen it. So for me, getting rid of a lot of, I guess, these hard rules, and just focusing more so on my behaviors. I have my protein ranges. I try to eat protein, 4 or 5 times a day, if I'm up a little later. It's been, it's just so many levels of restriction that have kind of, and stress, that like I got to take off that backpack, that heavy backpack after a day of school. And it's been amazing. And I think it being so stress free has definitely, just helped me maintain muscle better, but then also, I guess it's played a role in making it feel the way it has been up until this point.
Yeah, that's great, because that actually leads into what the majority of this, I think, discussion will probably be about, is that I think this is different. You haven't done this before, where you haven't tracked your nutrition as closely, and actually and so the listeners are aware, that's kind of what you're talking through in terms of like not tracking food so closely through like MyFitnessPal or what have you. And kind of, I have seen, however, that you are tracking body weight. So what variables are you and aren't you tracking at the moment from like previous preps, maybe that you've dropped to this one?
So I am tracking my body weight, just because that is a nice glimpse into like, what is my behavior doing, right? I've been using the Happy Scale app, which is a wonderful app. I need to figure out a way to crack that algorithm and apply it to my spreadsheet. It's so useful because you could go a few days without hitting a low, and like you're generally heading in a better direction than you were, say, last week. So that app's been amazing, even for someone like me, who I don't think I'd classify myself as like a chaser of body weight lows, which is, you don't want to be in that space. They're nice when they happen, but they should be, okay, cool, down, and like, let's move on. So I'm tracking body weight, still very useful, but I do want to get it to the point, at some point, where I'm not doing body weight and I can just go by visuals, because that is the bottom line at the end. And these, like, I won't skip steps, but we'll bring it back to this. But yeah, okay. So body weight at some point I do want to get rid of, and just, because at the end it's a subjective sport. It's like, like, that's a new line, that's a new vein. Okay, haven't seen that thing in a while. There it is, right? So I'm doing that, making sure I have amount of protein feedings that make sense. And I am calorically aware, much in the same way, like my example of like, someone who's trying to go from 20% body fat to somewhere in the mid-teens. Like most bodybuilders can do that without tracking. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll do it for you. It's kind of weird, but I can make this happen. And I think previous to that, I was able to get it beyond that next step. Like I could go from like mid-teens to, somewhere like in the 10, 11 range, like easy. Like I'd done that before, but I had never gone beyond that point. And it just dawned on me. I'm like, I think it's time. Like that's probably the next step. And yes, it's for the challenge, because I'm curious in that way, but also I feel it's, like sometimes you just need systems that are dynamic, tend to work better over the long haul. Like that is the one perk about flexible dieting, right? It's like I remember my first diet ever. What killed me was like, this was my pre-workout meal. This was a stupid template diet. And I'm like, man, if I could have a little bit of the carbs from this, just put it there, I'd have much better. And it's like, so like obvious, but I'm like, I don't want to break the rules. So I didn't, and with flexible dieting, it's like, hey, you get to make those calls, like you can adjust things to make you more stress resistant to just like life in general, to make you better equipped to handle the day's training based on your current level of readiness, and catch on trends and move things around to help alleviate whatever the most current issue is. And like, I guess you could say this is like flexible dieting, I can't say to the next level because that sounds a little pompous, but it is the culmination of like all this stuff that I've learned over the years and learned like within, like while using the vessel that I currently reside in. So it's very dynamic, and I love that part where it's like, oh, I have a lake day. Okay, shoot, we're going to be on those kayaks for a minute. Let me make sure that I have, a bottle of coconut water with me, and I'll eat a nice hearty meal so that I could enjoy that, and it doesn't beat me up the way it might have had I had something more strict. And then they get to my next training session, I'm like, kayaking, I'm gonna have to cut that out. So, and again, just like not having those omnipresent numbers, it's just been, it's been huge. It's been, especially from the stress perspective.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
I think there's actually some research going into this where like part of the kind of hunger and like the diet fatigue people feel is just related to knowing that they're in a deficit. Whereas when you remove the knowledge of that, although you're in a deficit right now, Alberto, but when people remove, I guess, senses of restriction, they just like, it's much smoother. They're not as stressed. And because I think Menno Henselmans has done some work on that. And I think he even, when he last got very lean, for the majority of that time, he also wasn't tracking. He used like habits, but towards like the final part, he was like, I just couldn't lose when I got towards the end and I just had to start tracking things. So do you envisage that to happen for yourself, or do you think you'll be able to go the entire way? I guess actually I'm jumping ahead to some questions that I had, but the thing I guess I'm interested in as well, when you're not tracking, people will think, especially towards the end, you want to track things like fluid intake, electrolytes, sodium, potassium, maybe even that far, and like fiber and those sort of variables. Are those things that you'll start to take more notice of as you get closer? Or are those things that you're also feeling like, I don't know if you're taking refeeds now and you're still almost not tracking those and just having a bit more and kind of somewhat aware of that, and you're able to kind of use that almost just slightly less precise tool versus the more precise of weighing and kind of putting it into a spreadsheet and that sort of thing. Don't know if that question made sense.
No, it's complicated. It has to be complicated, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. Like I've been there before, where it's like you wake up, fresh sheet of macros, right? You're like, oh yeah, and then you're like, oh, I'm about to take some off, and once I take some, like there's no going back. Like that is it. Like your numbers just do this throughout the day, and like it's a very weird sort of pressure. And I for sure, like whenever, look, the same thing is going on. It's just I'm not peeping there all the time, and it's just, again, it's just all translated over into behaviors. Behaviors that what also has helped me is that I've done it numerous times, so like I've reaped the benefits from them. So in my mind, there's already this reward system there where it's just like, if I do these things, I will get what I want at the end. So maybe it does suck, and maybe I am like more, I don't know, I guess dieted than I suspect. I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe I am. But since I've done it so many times, I think it's easier for me to like sacrifice those things, and they might be a little bit harder than I'm making them out to be. I'm not sure. It's hard to differentiate between like good habits because I've clocked in enough rewards versus like, this is just cake. I don't know. Sometimes I have to state that. We'll say this about Menno. I think at some point he'll probably, knowing that dude, like that next push when he gets there, like next time he's in a similar position, he'll probably make the jump. He'll be like, all right, let's see if I could just take a few steps in that direction without the freaking map, right? But do I see myself using no, because this is working so well. So I feel that I don't want to. But we'll see. We'll see, especially as you get the nerves as you get closer, right? And right now there's still a nice little cushion, but it's worked so well. And one of the things I've kind of signed off to is that like fat is so like voluminous, that I just think sometimes like what a pound takes off of us should probably uncover a little bit more than I think we think it should. And then, and again, it's like, there's all these other dynamics, like, especially with fluid, so I've been extra patient and making sure that when I do lose a pound, like, I get a whole lot out of that pound. And I mean, so far, like, when I think about it, it's like, okay, I started about 175, 176. I lost a little weight the week before, starting the prep, because I went to Las Vegas, and, you went to Vegas, it's all drugs and parties. But it was like dancing for like days on straight, and like, minimal nutrition. I needed that, but it kind of got me a little bit closer, like, to, I guess I was already at a good place, but it took a few pounds off me. And so from 175 down to right now, I think my average is like 168. So I've only lost about 7 pounds in like the first 11 weeks, I believe, at this point, 11 weeks and some change. And that means that I have, from this point on, another 7 pounds to go per, like, my old record books. I don't know. Cause I'm like, man, that's already what I've lost. And as you get leaner, there's a point where it's like, you lose 3 pounds. That is a quarter of your body fat. Right. So I don't know. I don't know. I want to keep it like this because I think I am preserving muscle, really well. And as long as I can honestly say that I'm still in a place where it's like, I am doing this, for the bottom line at the end. And sometimes, like, for the bottom line, you do have to, like, nurture and take care of other things, like, had a long day, probably need an extra 200-300 calories just to get my stress down to a more suitable level. As long as I feel like I can still make those decisions that revolve around the bottom line, I think from the outsider, again, sometimes those decisions of like, oh, you're just being a baby, you're being a softie. But, like, no matter how you cut it, no matter how good you are at putting stress away, and I'll deal with that later, or keeping your feet moving as stressful events happen, like, it still has a toll on you, like, from a physiological standpoint. Like, I don't care who you are, it does. So I think I will, man. We'll see. But I've taken it this far. Like, I've never been able, I think, based on history, like, feeling this good the way I feel right now, probably I'd say I've done this like 10 pounds heavier, but never here. So who knows? I might be just out of time next week. We'll see. But I'll be honest about that when it does happen.
And actually, I really appreciate. I watched a few of your vlogs just leading into this, because I tend to follow Instagram a bit more than like keeping up with the vlogs. But I wanted to watch some of the vlogs before we had this chat, and I was just like, oh, this is awesome! Like, getting these insights into such an elite competitor, because you are just completely honest with everything that's going on. There's no like pussyfooting around it. There's nothing, like, it's just completely honesty, which is really, really nice and refreshing. So I appreciate that, like, you are putting yourself out here. Like, it's already stressful in probably the position you're in, the authority figure you are, the competitor you are, to put yourself out there just in terms of competing, but then putting yourself out there in terms of, I'm trying this new thing that might not, like, I don't know, like, it's the new thing for me and it's going well so far. So then if it doesn't go how you want it to, I guess it's the similar thing to like the Dirk situation where he's so lean so early, and then it's like, oh, like, is it going to be there in time? And it just, for you, it's confidence, and I guess confidence in just who you are and as a person as well, not necessarily even just the method. So I appreciate that a lot. And so the question I was going to get to actually was, I heard in one of the vlogs, and this is, I think, one of the more like, I guess maybe arty or less, for those who really like the numbers and that sort of thing, it's something harder to get with and maybe takes experience a lot of the way as well. You talked about being kind of flat and how you, and like kind of stringy, potentially. I don't know if those were exact words, but it's kind of that way in terms of in the video, you're like, oh, I don't like how that's looking there. Like, and talking about, I think, kind of refeeding and things like that. I'd love to hear more about kind of your process for doing those sort of things, because it sounds quite, from the outside in, hearing it, it sounds very kind of, I guess, like subjective, and it isn't necessarily an objective thing. And yeah, how you go about kind of selecting when you refeed and how you do that, and if that's auto-regulated, I'd love to hear more.
That one is definitely linked into the Gregorian calendar a little bit more, simply because so does my training. And there's the early days of the week, like those are the most important days in your training school. That's how it should be, in my opinion. So I like to come around that bend, like not just very nourished for those sessions, but also like I'd like to sprinkle some nourishment on those days. So the day that I eat the most happens to be the day that I do nothing, because I just need that. Like I heard this a while ago, and it might have been Lyle McDonald, who that dude's a gem. Like all the things that he says, like he's just good at what he does, man. And sometimes he'll say things that's like, fuck, dude, for a guy that's like not in the trenches, like your knack for picking up on stuff is amazing. But it was about not having rest days, and I think not having rest days in the context of like bodybuilders, competitive bodybuilders, and it's like when you think about it, it's like, hey, I don't know how true the whole China stories are, but it's like, hey, these little kids from China are hand selected early on because they are gifted, right? It's like, all right, taking you. They all do gymnastics, I guess the legend has it, and then eventually it's like, oh, you're 6'10", you're going to play basketball, right? So that's what they do for a living. It's like, you're playing basketball for a living, and you're very talented. You're handmade for this sport. It's like, even these folks, it's like they have days off, and you have to remember they're also eating enough, like as is. They might be on like extra special supplements. I don't know. But again, the main thing is like they have days off. So like us, who it's like, this is a hobby that maybe we just take it a little too far is probably the best way to describe it, right? It's a labor of love. We have these stresses. We have these other things that we have to cater to. Our country's not funding us to bodybuild. We're not eating enough. We're not on, a lot of us anyways, are not on like these super supplements. You should probably have a day off, especially when you're going to diet for like months on end. So I always make sure I have just a full day off every week, where like the goal is to like almost not move and just like replenish. And it definitely helps when it comes to the fatigue management. Helps with the mind. It helps with knowing where that line is in regards to spillover. Like that's one thing. It's like I always know where that line is with me. And it changes a little bit like as the weeks go on, but it's good to know where that's at. So the refeeds are a little bit more calculated in that sense. And main thing is I just try to hit somewhere in the vicinity of like anywhere between 500 to 600 grams of carbs, which is, fairly simple, like, 4 or 5 meals, like somewhere in the hundreds, and like you're good. And then sometimes it's 2 days, sometimes it's 3 days, just kind of depending on like how well those, the for sure 2 days like did their job.
I can even just listening to this, like feel slight amounts of anxiety going through my mind of like going through it myself. I'm like, man, I would so struggle with if I had like a step count. Like, I'm guessing actually this is another thing. Are you tracking steps? Is that something you're not tracking or you're tracking?
No. And I think this is probably one of the just perks of just, being a naturally leaner individual. And that's just that I don't lose a whole lot of meat, like when I'm dieting. Like if anything, it's an easier body to move in. It feels like sometimes.
Sure. Yeah.
So, so no need. I threw in some cardio sessions just to, because I think I will definitely need those at the end to maybe mobilize the more stubborn fat areas. So it's here in place now, mostly to just kind of gain that conditioning, because whenever I was doing cardio, I started this prep with cardio, had to get rid of it. Like I felt terrible. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have to do it. I'd much rather feel terrible now than terrible like the weeks leading into the show. So I think I should know this, right? 2 sessions at like 20 minutes. And I know for me, like whenever I'll follow Lyle McDonald's like stubborn fat protocols for that.
Okay.
Minus the supplements, because Yohimbine is freaking gnarly. Like I am a pretty chill dude, and like there's one thing that knocks my chill out is the Yohimbine. So everything minus that. And just 20 minutes of that. And like, at least at this point, every time I do it, I feel like I'm visibly leaner on the other side of that. Although it might just be like water and, sweat, subcutaneous stuff. But nevertheless, like it's going to be there. I think I'll have to use it. Not going to take much, but we started the cardio. No steps as of right now, because I'm zippy enough in the gym. Like I go from station to station just to bullshit with everyone. And like, I don't realize I'm doing it. So Yeah.
That's good. That's interesting on the cardio. Actually, it's nothing. Is that something you've always found, or I guess with yourself and competitors, to be something that you found to be helpful for getting those more stubborn areas in?
More so for me, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, more so for me. I've used Yohimbine. I've done this with Yohimbine, without Yohimbine. It doesn't really make a difference to me, anyways. Just
Yeah.
I don't feel crazy. But yeah, but I don't. It's been probably, I haven't done this form. Like, it worked really well in 2011. So I'm going back to the archives and like, oh, let's see if this works. So actually, yeah, the pictures. I don't know if you recall, but the pictures like in my old apartment, and like there's a girl behind me like having
I know exactly the one.
Right, like that was right after one of those sessions. Like I was like, oh my god, like this stuff clears me up. So it might be working. At the very least, what it has done for me is like usually I'll do a little interval-y session the morning before I do my show.
Sure. Yeah.
When I have the luxury of wearing Dream Tan, because you know you can't do that with the standard tans, but a little sweat and just moving, like I feel like I wake up like even more crispy.
That's something I use from Dr. Joe, because he's always said and recommended that. And I just find, at least if anything, when I don't, like on rest days, for example, I'm just colder through the day if I don't have that morning. And if you're cold, like you need heat to vasodilate, to get a pump. And like, it's just everything functions better when you have a bit of like exercise, at least in the morning. So that doesn't
take a whole lot either.
No.
You know, right.
So that's super interesting with and I guess that's nice because at least I've seen it, these kind of, I don't know if it's like, they're not, I don't think it's Yohimbine in these creams. It might be where people are like using these topical creams and they're rubbing on areas. Yeah. So at least like with the stubborn fat loss like approach, it's at least burning calories for sure. So that's beneficial for what we're trying to achieve in terms of fat loss. And then the downsides are pretty minimal in terms of just the output and the effort that you're doing, because it's short. It's not likely to impact training too much, and it doesn't cost anything. Whereas these creams, they could be doing completely nothing and they're costing money. And I guess that it could be a positive placebo. So who knows?
I think the old hemorrhoid medications, they changed the formula back in the day, would actually work for that.
Right.
Yeah, because they pull water from the desired area.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think they changed the formulation. One thing that you reminded me of though was that during this prep, this is probably I know it's the best I felt so far, because I am hotter and like sweatier than ever. Yeah. So like to me it's like just so, and a lot of the dieting symptoms are just, none of the dieting symptoms are there yet. And I think what I can attribute a lot of this to is was it the podcast you did with Dr. Campbell? It might have been, where it was mentioned, and you might be able to pull the file out on this better than I could, on just the impacts that losing muscle have on like thyroid function, just hormonal function. Right. I
think it was.
So one of the reasons I know that like the better I feel, like the better things are just going to work. So yeah, I think to a lot of, especially my old head bodybuilders, like I know for a fact, Steve, there's a lot of like old school blue collar, like bodybuilder dudes that like, just do everything by the book. That I'm on the cusp of being in that generation that just they don't build them like they used to, sort of deal, who maybe look at some of the things I do and they're like, that's not how you play bodybuilding, bro. That's not how you play bodybuilding. Like you're killing the tradition here. But like a lot of this is, again, I just want to make things better for everyone at the end. Like that's what I want. But yeah, I'm avoiding pain as much as I can. Just like we would tell your overweight friend that, going from, I don't know, like 140 kilos down to 130 shouldn't be all that painful. Obviously it's not going to be a 1-for-1, but it's very similar to that. And that's why I've only had 2 shitty moments up until this point. And to me, that is probably a sign that I'm at the very least maintaining all my muscle. And maybe acutely, because of the way I rotate my calories, it wouldn't be out of the question, especially if I am keeping myself healthy when it comes to all other things in the system, that I might be putting on muscle in like regional areas.
That would be amazing if you were doing that. But
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, if you're able to keep training performance high and especially if you're someone who deals with being lean well, like, and you can have still very productive training in that space, and you've set yourself up with, like you said, you're not having to lose huge amounts of weight and everything. There's no reason that couldn't happen. And actually something I wanted to bring up, because I think people will be able to relate to this a lot, and I think it does tie into everything you've said. Well, actually, I should just ask, how many Diet Cokes are you drinking at the moment? And then what does the Diet Coke measure mean for people who might not be sure what that is?
Man, we've gone down. So by the way, what biggest mug in the house? So this is, I'll take it, man. This says the queen. Probably the mug, not me. But this is my caffeine intake at this point. It's just basically 2 yerba mates. That's it. So I've actually titrated my caffeine intake downwards, like as the prep has gone on, which terrific sign, right? Because usually it's the other way around.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is like, it wrecks your sleep. You need more caffeine to fix it. Now I don't want to play that game. So if anything, I brought it down. I'm trying not to use pre-workouts, because sometimes what they will do is I'll go a little bit harder than what I can honestly recover from right now. You know, so I think for greener lifters who just want to have a very awesome day, sometimes they don't see it that way. You know, it's like, I got to be careful with that, because, right. That's the caffeine status. And then I'll leave cans of Diet Coke around the house that are not even finished. So that's a great sign, because I've been on the other side of that, where I literally have to go on fit day and figure out, okay, how many carbs in diet sodas, because I feel that I might be drinking enough to impact things. And surely I wasn't, but it was still pretty bad. Like I've gotten to the point. I think the first time I got peeled where probably anywhere between 10 to 20 a day.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It was just my form of hydration. It was 2 liters at the end, a lot, because, you know, those are easier. Sure. You might as well at that point. But so I've been in those places where it's like, ooh, like my Splenda. I remember at some point my oatmeal, first time I got peeled, had 10 packets of Splenda. Like that was the standard.
Yeah.
So I'm not messing with that too much. And you know how it goes. Like eventually, you remember like if it fits your macros, like Gen 1, it's like everything had sprinkles, sucralose, and you can get to the point where like everything is, like it has to be ultra sweet, right? Or you're just not enjoying it, and it just makes it more agonizing at the end. Because if there's just a point where it's just like, okay, you just have to be a little bit hungry and just like sit in that and just be okay with that. Yeah. So we're doing good on that front. I'd say probably the best metric right now for the diet soda is going to be weekly basis. I probably get about 7 to 8.
That's great. Yeah, I think the description you said in terms of not playing that game is such a brilliant description, not just for caffeine, because I think a lot of people are ignorant to caffeine and the impact. I think people are getting better and more clued up into what that does for sleep and things. But also, I guess I think it's a great way to describe also not playing the game with like sweeteners and diet friendly foods and everything like that, because it was the same for me. It's not like you can't have those things and get lean, but I guess you're focusing more on kind of eating not plain food. Like I'm sure you enjoy your food, but you're not making it hyper tasty or anything like that. So you're keeping the palatability relatively like not low necessarily. Like you're not going out of your way to make food taste awful, but you're also not going out of your way to make it extra spicy or spicy is the wrong word, because spicy might be good, but extra tasty.
You know, if anything, if there's one thing I do play with a little bit more when I am dieting is more of the bitter taste buds. Because you are more sensitive to taste, and you know, if I have a piece of like dark chocolate, like it's more multi-dimensional. It's more complicated. You have to be more in the moment for those flavors. Whereas like, you know, if it fits your macros, like French toast, like you're just like, more. How it's gone too quick, right? Yeah. So bitter things make you kind of sit on it and taste. Like my yerba mate tea, I think pre-workout I'll probably have some dark chocolate to go with my whatever I'm eating, and those sort of tastes have you, again, just pay attention to what it is that you're doing and how you're actually feeling.
And then I guess obviously you're taking refeeds. I think you not long ago when your Brian was actually over, you took a diet break with him. Are you pre-planning diet breaks in, or are those something you're also kind of feeling out?
The peak weeks and large are going to be like diet breaks, right?
Okay.
Like I might have to peak for that first show. So I was like, okay, what is kind of like the midway point? So I just decided midway point between the first show, which is about 10 weeks. I thought it was fairly reasonable given the fact that, again, I've felt like I'm burning up today. Like it is not even that hot. So again, like it's, sometimes for athletes anyways, because sometimes they're not very good at relaying how they're actually feeling. Sometimes they tell me they think I want to hear. So with them, very often I have to take the whole like, hey, the best way to fix a problem is to not have a problem at all sort of mindset. So like, let's be proactive with that. Of course, over time, you want to get them build that relationship where they can tell you everything and they can pick up on trends much in the same way that I'm doing. And we're able to work off that information. Like Dirk next prep, I'm having to do something very similar to what I'm doing right now, where, and there's varying levels of that. Like autonomy is just something that I think the more you have, the less stress it is on you and the better you get at navigating through, again, like the most current situation, but not just that, also kind of looking at like what you've been through just a few steps back and what might be on the horizon as well. So sometimes like to get athletes peeled, it's like, I'll be like, hey, the carbs will be somewhere between, and actually if you enjoy me mentioning him, my client, Dean Lester up in Canada, he, to get him peeled like this last season, I gave him a broad range of numbers. And I'm like, all right, when you feel good, you strike, but I don't want every day to be a striking day. It's like it's like a boxing match. It's like you go in there when you have a punch, when you have to kind of back off a little bit, back off, you just got tagged. All right. Just be defensive for a minute. And that's how we played it. And it worked marvelously well. And I think he was a lot less tapped out because he had some say in regards to like when, he pushed. Like it's no different than like when we write programs for people, right? It's like, okay, these are the parameters. Over time, they make sense, but you're what's going to bring them to life. At the end, it's your decision making that really decides like how far we take this. So yeah, autonomy, depending on the dieter's experience, I think is just something it's like worth building upon. And like I got flack for that. Some guy, you know how it is, man. Some snot face troll online is like why is he even paying for a coach if he's just gonna do it? And I'm like bro, like this is it's like we're here to educate like about everything else. So yeah, like the more you educate them, the more you teach them to fend for themselves. Like does it make your job easier? Yeah, probably, but it makes their job easier too. Yeah, which is like great for them.
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we pride ourselves on providing personalized service that will take your physique and knowledge to the next level. If you're interested, check the description and sign up.
I think that's really well said, because I have it with some of my clients where I will give them more autonomy, particularly with training. So it might be ranges in there at least so that they can pick and choose, like if they want to take an extra set or kind of keep it where it is, and they understand what they're trying to aim for with whether or not they do that or not. The ranges in terms of food and like calories and whether to strike and push harder isn't something I've played with so much, but the same reason I do it with training is because they can make a better decision than I can, kind of not guessing, but kind of maybe I jump the gun or exactly right? They're in the moment and they can make the right choice. I imagine that's exactly what you're trying to get at with the nutritional kind of and having the options there. And it's great that you're doing it yourself, because I don't think I'd be comfortable giving it to clients till I've experienced that. And that's maybe something I have to personally play with, because I'm bad for that. If I have like a calorie goal, it's like, that's what I'm hitting and I do everything to hit that. But like you said, if you have a day where, I don't know, I went to my niece and nephew over the weekend and they were like jumpy on me and I was way more active, probably need a bit more potentially that day. If you're dieting, like you probably burnt a bunch more energy. So you don't want to kind of hurt yourself in that situation. But I guess it takes a while to get comfortable to be able to auto-regulate at that level and then passing that on to clients. I think it's like you said, you're a teacher. I don't think many, like myself included, maybe I need a coach like yourself, Alberto, to be able to like help guide me through that kind of process, because I think a lot of us like that kind of objective and like the same thing each day, and making choices ourselves sometimes in those moments can be tricky.
I think you'd probably do it to a certain extent already with your training, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And right. And I think that is probably something, I don't know if you've ever, like, you probably have, I'm sure you have, because you're like that. You've thought about like, man, like this was such a good call. Like, I wish my athletes had the benefit of being able to do this, because it's literally saved my butt, and I could have seen how this could have gone poorly for, this person, that person, right? Like, I've thought about that many times too, where it's like, oh, man, like I'm so lucky to have me here at the gym with me. Like we totally saved this session. And like at the end, it's like, well, what good is, because a lot of the people that come to us, like they're nerds at heart, right? When it comes to this stuff, that's how they find us. Like, well, what good is this? Like, I guess this, everything you've learned in this education, if you can't create like these more like dynamic, sort of systems where, like you get to play off the fact that you know what you know. And like, obviously, like we can't expect because this is our jobs, right? Like we know quite a bit at this point, but like there's always something that an athlete can work on based off like the current level of competence that they can toy around with and gain confidence and just rack up enough good day-to-day decisions that over the long term amount to something really good.
Yeah. Absolutely. And something I did want to ask through this, we kind of talked about kind of some of the things that you're doing at the moment and trying to stay kind of objective, not pushing yourself too hard, kind of unnecessarily, which I imagine would be really easy to do. Do you have, I guess you have the team in your corner to kind of, if you need assistance or help, do you have anyone kind of who's kind of a bit like your eyes to help guide you along the way as well?
I do, but I haven't used it just yet. I think I get closer to sealing the deal with like my posing and how I want my poses to sit. Like Jeff will probably play a big role in that. I think when it comes to just like how am I pacing it, if I feel like I run into those issues, like it'll probably be probably Brian. I definitely Eric's been always super useful to me and a big help, and obviously knows quite a lot, but Brian's like in town. He's like literally, I drive 10 minutes and I'm there. But like I guess like a lot of this is unknown as well. So
sure,
I'm perfectly okay with being wrong. I that's why I think I will stick it through the whole way, like with this system, because I do think it can get me there. And I also don't want to say this is something that I flat out just am the first to do it, because I'm far from it. I think first time I heard of someone doing this was Marshall Johnson, actually. Like the way he eats his breakfast, he literally grabs his oats and just pours it. I'm like, it's reasonable. Let me get my coffee. Let's go. So like, I think a lot of guys, not a lot of guys have done it to, as well as Marshall has, but like I remember hearing him say that, and I'm like, man, that is so interesting. I don't know if I could do it that way. Why would you want to do it that way? The human margin of like error is a human, but then, as you do this long enough, you're like, oh, I'm usually like pretty right, about things. And it's like you and me, dude, we could end up at like, I don't know, the shittiest like food buffet, and we'd be able to like ninja some sort of like meal that kind of at least fits like for that moment in time, like bodybuilding, like macronutrients, so yeah. I guess it's too much of an experiment, and I think a lot of it is just like, I guess it's pretty internal, because again, I've had two moments where I've felt shitty up until this point. Like you said, part of it for sure, genetic, but it's also never been this way. Like I probably have only been able to dip a little bit below 180 pounds feeling this way before. And here I am. I weighed in 165 the other day, which is, at least that low is like 5 pounds away from like my stage weight.
Okay. No, that's, really exciting. And I think it makes sense that you've done this enough times to be able to kind of keep that objectivity. And also like the fact is, it would be hard for someone, if you had all the numbers there, I guess it would be a bit easier for them to be like, oh yeah, and like, you know, tweak this, tweak that, but you're doing it all kind of yourself in that sense. So that makes a lot of sense. And it's good that you have that confidence just to take it through, and that you're feeling kind of relatively kind of relaxed about it. And I hope that maintains. And I know you said you're probably going to have to peak for this first show. Is the goal then, once you've peaked for that show, after that, to essentially kind of be riding out that sort of, I guess you could call it the bodybuilding taper? I remember that's kind of what you called it.
Yeah. I think based off my projections, I think we'll probably September. Yeah, probably like 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, maybe like start moving things upwards. But I mean, my coordinates could be wrong. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if I was tapering up food either, like going into that show as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm just, as long as I know that for sure I will look the way I want to look for Worlds, and it's just make sure that you look good enough where you can qualify for Worlds. It's kind of like, you know, like that's like, cause I'm not talented to the point where I can just cruise at 85%. It's like, oh, I see y'all at Worlds. It's like, I need to be at a certain level to make it that more likely of a possibility. So, yeah, I think at the end, there is one show that I'm focused on. I think that helped me be very rational, even though that's why when you ask me, like, how many weeks out, I'm like, I think I'm 8, not sure. But yeah, like Steve, one thing I'd say is that, like, again, it's like what I am experiencing now. It's like, I want more people to experience it. Probably prep might not be for everyone, right? But definitely try a casual fat loss phase in the off season without tracking. You know, I think like it's so empowering the first few times you do it. It's kind of like when you come back from a trip, like the first time ever, and like you're like, man, I kind of, at least on the food side, like, you know, I did all the right things. I remember the server taking my plate away, and a tear came down, but, you know, waved it away, and I did it, you know, like it's super empowering, because again, it's like everything you've learned, everything you've practiced and auditioned for, like in action. So, you know, try with the fat loss phase. I love gaining phases like this as well. Like with my athletes, gone to where I feel comfortable with them. I'll tell them something along the lines of like, all right, the next 6 to 8 months, I want you to bring me anywhere between 5 to 9 pounds. Go do it, you know? And it works better. Like people tend to gain in a leaner way compared to like when we're trying to gain like X% of body weight every month. Because some months are faster, some months are slower. Even the people who we see in like everyday life they look very weight stable. Like if you were to weigh them over the course of the year, it's like they'd be pretty zigzaggy. So to expect like these like linear things, like, and I guess in theory sounds like amazing, but in practice it doesn't work out that way ever.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think having practiced it at some point, but obviously you don't want to just go into a prep, because that's like driving a Formula One car or something. But you could I was just thinking, I'm running just a mini cut now. I'm like, I could have actually just done this. Definitely could have done it not tracked easily. I probably maybe would have ventured into maybe too large of a deficit. I'm not sure though. Like I wouldn't have known. So that's something I have to think about and have a play with, and maybe even play a little bit with some of my athletes as well who are interested to do it. Because I imagine for some people maybe the people who are scared to do it probably are the ones who almost need it the most in some ways, I imagine too. Because it's like, if you're scared to do it, it must be a fairly stressful thing. Like, and I can imagine it being quite a relief to kind of get rid of those reins in many ways.
The numbers sometimes quantify your suck for you, man. You know? Like,
yeah.
They do, right? It's like, I'm on like 1,800 calories. You know, it's so little. Where sometimes I feel like the bros that are like on 1,800 calories and just have their menu plan, like they're just like, just got to do what I got to do and then move on with my day, right? So I guess there's a in between those.
Yeah, actually, that's a quick question. I saw in your kind of vlog what you're eating on a daily basis. Is your food quite similar day to day, or do you use the flexible dieting? You do change it up quite a bit, or do you keep it relatively static?
No, it's so that's the one thing about calories versus macros. I feel like it's made my diet a lot more like inclusive. You know, like when I was on lower fat stuff, because in the past that's usually what I stuck to. There's just a whole segment of foods that weren't in. So I like the fact that like now when I'm shopping for like steak, it's like, oh, which one of you guys is like the most well marbled here, you know? Like that's been nice. Whole legs has been nice. So there are a few staples. I like my animal fats. Like that's like I'd be good. Like yeah, like post show if I just had a steak, it'd be great. Like I'm done. That's it. No sides. I like fruits. I have troubles with vegetables. I get called out on that a lot. So vegetables, it's usually
I
going
saw
to
there
be
weren't any veg. I was
yeah.
like,
They just take so long to eat, you know. Well, they do. So, and I'm still drinking my calories. Like,
yeah,
you know, it's just I hate stopping what I'm doing to eat still. So, yeah, a lot of fruits, a lot of meats, vegan protein powder, and I try to rotate those just based off like what's in season.
sure.
But my staples are like blueberries and cherries. Like those you can get frozen year round. Like I'll have those all the time. But usually like peaches are about to come in. So I'm gonna be messing with those soon. But yeah, when you are doing like just being calorically aware on a high protein diet, I think rather than having, you know, set macros, it does kind of make it so that, hey, like you have more breadth when it comes to what you're eating. The menu plan is just much more rich and full. And if you're going to go through a extended malnutrition period, because that is what a prep is, you might as well do it with a lot of food variety.
Sure. Fantastic. That makes sense. And actually, I'm glad, because I was almost like, oh, maybe you're kind of eating to a meal plan. And so you kind of know what your numbers exactly are anyway. And so it's not really what you're saying it is, but because you have the flexibility element there in quite a large way, like that's even better, because that makes it even more what you're trying to actually do versus like what that could be. So, and people might
I just got into blue cheese, those little sticky ones. Oh my God. Like, it's just, yeah. So it's been nice, the variety. But again, like the older you get, the more you realize like, damn, this is like really good for you. So I do try to make the majority of my decisions based off like what is like as much as I despise eating sometimes, the eating part of like bodybuilding. It's like you get to hug yourself like many times over the day. And that's quite nice.
Final question for you, Alberto, is what's the ultimate goal this season for you?
Ultimate goal. Let's see. I would. Is one goal?
Give me a few. I'll give you a few.
Okay.
I was like the ultimate. No, yeah, several goals.
I would like to be top 5 at Worlds in the lightweight class, while showcasing a physique that like goes a top 5 because of the way I look, as opposed to like, you know, who showed up, right?
Yeah.
Because if I got like second place and like it's like, dude, you look like Dookie, like that wouldn't sit well with me. I'd rather get like beat up on, but I'm like, man, like I brought my best. So I think that would be one. I think the other one is going to be probably I like to. I'm writing a lot of this stuff down right now. So I do want to have a fat loss guide that encompasses everything from, because as we discussed, everything is it's just a gradient, like whether it's a prep or whether, you know, like you haven't done anything for 20 years and like you want to get in shape. Like it's like when it comes to fat loss, like it's so much commonality there. So yeah. I'd like to have a good sturdy fat loss manual that covers everything from like, I want to lose 20 pounds so I can, you know, enjoy my honeymoon or I just want a prep athletes. So, you know, I guess you get to that point when you're prepping where like, that's one thing I have experienced. It's like your brain's just like, you know, it's great. It's a great place in that regard, right? You might not seem like you're doing much sometimes from the outside, but things are turning, right?
Dead behind the eyes, but the brain's going.
Yes. So yeah, I'd like to do those two things: place well at Worlds, and get that book out because, it's at the end what I've specialized in, you know. So it'd be kind of like a life's work sort of deal, at least up until this point, and. It's just be cool to be published, even though it's internet published in like 2022, which is not the same as like, you know, 20 years ago. But yeah,
amazing. Well, I'll be following along. I'm sure everyone listening will be, well, the majority of them, I hope, be following along as well. And I know kind of you're documenting it over on your 3DMJ YouTube channel. So there's vlogs going over there, and I think you're doing them every week at the moment for the most part. So that's awesome. Physique updates, the whole shebang. So if people are interested, like check all those out, please do head over there. And obviously over on Instagram as well, I'm sure you're documenting bits and pieces and just knowledge bombs across the way. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to let the listeners know about, but I imagine those are the two main ones.
No, just that at the end, I guess regardless of where we're at, like we have so much in common, whether you're a high level bodybuilder or you started last year, like same thing, man, same exact thing. So we can all learn a lot from each other, and it goes both ways, so yeah, I think regardless of level, I definitely say it's like, hey, peep in, like I'm gonna try to get better. That's the one thing, like with my YouTube, it's like usually spur of the moment thing. I just gotten to the point where it's like, I'm very type B, and it's like, I need to probably list out what it is that the point is to like this entry. So I'll try to get better at that. Thank you, Steve.
No, yeah, you're completely right. Like, you don't get to see inside of many people, especially at your levels, preps. Like, there's a lot of people vlogging their preps and things, but not at the level you are with the amount of experience you have. So it's like invaluable insights that you can get, because you can learn a lot in a book, but when you see someone going through the process and talking through that, you pick up things that maybe you wouldn't necessarily. And hopefully people have taken that from this chat as well. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time, Alberto. I'm excited to follow along. And guys, thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon. So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge. And I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.